Pick up a plastic water bottle. Look at it. Now let me tell you something you will not be able to forget. Part of that bottle is already inside your brain. Not metaphorically, literally. Tiny fragments of plastic, nanometer in size, invisible to the naked eye, have crossed the blood-brain barrier, one of the most reliable protective mechanisms your body has, and settled into the neural tissue of your brain. And here is the most shocking part. This is not a hypothesis, and not a theory. In April 2026, Chinese researchers published a study in the journal Nature Health, in which they found microplastics in virtually every single human brain sample they tested, both healthy and diseased. Every single sample. Stay with me, because what comes next is even worse, and there is something very important you can do right now. Before we go further, let's establish what microplastics actually are, because most people dramatically underestimate the scale of the problem. Microplastics are plastic particles smaller than 5 millimeters. Nanoplastics are even smaller, less than 1 micrometer. They form when plastic objects break down under sunlight, heat, and mechanical friction, and enter the air, water, soil, and food supply. Here is the scale of what we are dealing with. Researchers estimate that the average person ingests the equivalent of a credit card's worth of plastic every single week. That sounds like an exaggeration, but it is a figure from peer-reviewed research. Microplastics have been found in blood, lungs, the placenta, testicles, breast milk, and heart tissue. A study presented at the American Heart Association conference in 2025 found that people with polyethylene in their arterial plaque had a 4.5 times higher risk of heart attack, stroke, or death over 3 years of follow-up. 4.5 times. But the brain is a different story entirely. And here is why this should concern you more than anything else. Hook. Wait. I haven't told you the most frightening part yet. It is about how quickly everything is getting worse. In 2025, the University of New Mexico published a study in Nature Medicine, one of the most authoritative medical journals in the world. Scientists analyzed brain, liver, and kidney samples from people who had died in 2016 and in 2024. The result is staggering. The brain contains significantly higher concentrations of microplastics than the liver or kidneys, higher than in the placenta, higher than in the testes. The brain turned out to be the organ with the greatest accumulation of plastic of all those studied, and this despite being protected by the blood-brain barrier, which is supposed to block the vast majority of foreign substances. The predominant polymer found in the brain is polyethylene, the material from which most plastic bags and bottles are made. Under electron microscopy, the particles appear as sharp fragments, worn, irregular, with jagged edges, not rounded particles, sharp shards. And now, the most alarming finding. The concentration of plastic in the brain increased by 50% in just 8 years, from 2016 to 2024. 50% in 8 years. This means that if the trend continues, by 2032, concentrations will have doubled again. The lead researcher, Professor Matthew Campen of the University of New Mexico, said precisely this. This really changes the landscape. It makes it so much more personal. But here's the question you must ask right now. What exactly is this plastic doing to your brain? I'm about to tell you, and you may wish you hadn't asked. How microplastics cross the blood-brain barrier is one of the most intriguing and alarming questions in modern neuroscience. The blood-brain barrier is a system of specialized cells lining the brain's blood vessels that act as an extremely strict filter. They allow oxygen and glucose through, but are supposed to block toxins, bacteria, and most foreign molecules. Nanoplastics cross it through several routes. The first, direct passage through endothelial cells by virtue of size. Nanoparticles are so small, they literally seep through the barrier. The second, and this is the most unexpected route, through the olfactory nerve. A study in JAMA network open found microplastics in the olfactory bulb of the human brain. This means particles can enter the brain directly through the nose, through the air you breathe. The third, through the gut and the vagus nerve, the very pathway through which the gut communicates with the brain. And here is what concerns researchers most. Nanoplastic particles accumulate in the brain over time. They are not eliminated as easily as from other organs. Compare this to how blood is regularly filtered by the kidneys and liver. The brain has no equivalent regular cleansing system. What enters the brain tends to stay there. Now I'm going to tell you about things in your home that are sending plastic directly into your brain. Some of them will shock you. This is where the science becomes genuinely alarming and genuinely complex, because I am going to give you the honest answer, not the one people want to hear. Direct evidence of harm to the human brain from microplastics is, at present, limited. That is the truth. Most mechanistic data comes from animal models, but here is what is important to understand. The animal data is consistent enough to cause serious concern among the world's leading neuroscientists. What research on animals and cell models shows? First, neuroinflammation. Microplastics activate inflammatory processes in the brain. The same process is linked to Alzheimer's and Parkinson's diseases. Second, disruption of synaptic transmission. Plastic particles can interfere with connections between neurons, the very connections that underlie memory, thought, and concentration. Third, oxidative stress. Microplastics trigger the production of free radicals that damage neural tissue. Fourth, disruption of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to recover from damage. But now, new data from Nature Health, April 2026. Chinese scientists found something that demands particular attention. In brain tumor samples, microplastic concentrations were higher than in healthy tissue. And, pay attention, the greater the surface area of microplastics within the tissue, the faster the tumor cells grew. The researchers explicitly note this does not prove that microplastics cause cancer, but it raises the question of whether they may influence how quickly existing tumors progress. Wait, there is more. There is something about how plastic gets into the brain that will genuinely surprise you. Where does the majority of microplastics in our bodies, and specifically in the brain, come from? Here are the primary sources the science identifies. First, drinking water, both bottled and tap. Studies show that plastic bottles release microparticles into water, especially when heated or reused multiple times. Reverse osmosis filters remove up to 99.9% of particles. This is the most effective water purification method currently available. Second, seafood and small fish. Anchovies, mussels, oysters. Organisms we eat whole accumulate high concentrations of microplastics. A 2025 study recommends consuming only the muscle portions of seafood and moderating intake of small mollusks. Third, and this one will surprise you, non-stick pans, Teflon, and other PTFE coatings, when heated or scratched, release thousands to millions of microparticles directly into your food. Switching to cast iron, stainless steel, or uncoated ceramic is one of the simplest and most effective steps you can take. Fourth, tea bags. Most commercial tea bags are made from nylon or polypropylene. When steeped in hot water, they release billions of nanoplastic particles into every single cup. Billions per cup. Fifth, synthetic clothing. When washed, fleece and other synthetic fabrics release thousands of microfibers. These enter wastewater systems, water bodies, and ultimately the air we breathe. Sixth, indoor air, plastic surfaces, carpets, curtains. All of these continuously shed microfibers into the air inside your home. Research shows that indoor air contains more microplastics than outdoor air. Children are especially vulnerable. They spend more time near the floor. And now, the most important part. What can you actually do? Because completely avoiding microplastics is impossible, but significantly reducing your exposure is absolutely possible. And here are the concrete steps. Before I give you the list, an important caveat that honest researchers include in every publication: completely eliminating microplastics from your life is not possible. This is not panic and not surrender. This is reality. Microplastics are already everywhere. In Arctic ice, on mountain peaks, in the deepest ocean trenches. But this does not mean there is nothing to be done. Reducing exposure genuinely works. And here is what the science says. Step 1. Water. Replace plastic bottles with glass ones. Install a reverse osmosis filter. It removes up to 99.9% of particles. If that is not accessible, a carbon filter is better than nothing. Never heat water or beverages in plastic containers. Step 2. The kitchen. Discard non-stick pans. They are one of the largest single sources. Replace plastic cutting boards with wooden or bamboo ones. Replace plastic kitchen utensils with metal or wooden ones. Never reheat food in plastic containers. Use only glass or ceramic. Give up tea bags. Use loose leaf tea with a metal strainer. Step 3. Air. Ventilate your home regularly. Use a high quality HEPA air filter. It captures particles down to 0.3 micrometers. Vacuum regularly. Minimize synthetic carpets and curtains. Step 4. Clothing. When washing synthetics, use a specialized bag or washing machine filter that captures microfibers. Prefer natural fabrics: cotton, linen, wool, silk. Step 5. Seafood. Eat larger fish. You consume only the muscle tissue. Be careful with mollusks and anchovies. They are eaten whole. And finally, what the leading cardiologist Sanjay Rajagopalan from Case Western Reserve University says directly: reducing microplastic exposure may be as important for heart health as proper nutrition and exercise. This is not a question of personal hygiene alone. It is a question of systemic change, banning single-use plastics at the governmental level. But until that happens, you start with what is in your hands. I want to end this conversation the same way I began, with that plastic bottle. You are not to blame for the fact that microplastics are already in your brain. This is a systemic problem created by decades of industrial production without regard for health consequences. Blaming yourself is neither useful nor fair, but knowledge is power. The scientist Matthew Campen found plastic in human brains, said, "This makes the problem so much more personal." That is exactly what I wanted to do today. Make it personal. Not an abstract environmental issue, but a question of your health and the health of those you love. Science is only beginning to understand the long-term consequences. New studies are published every few weeks, and I will be following them and telling you about them. That is precisely what this channel is here for. I research science and translate it into human language. All sources are in the description below the video. Until next time, take care of your brain, literally.